Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of SUGTalks. I'm Craig Dale, your host, and together with our special guests, we'll take a deep dive into the topics, challenges, and opportunities facing SAP users today. Please make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode. I'm delighted to be joined today by Cheryl Millyard, One Programme Director, Gloucestershire County Council, UKISUG board member, and also co-chair of the UKISUG Public Sector Community. Also Jim White, Regional Industry Leader of Public Services at EMEA North SAP, and Satpal Biant, Head of Public Sector SAP UK and Ireland. So welcome. And in today's episode, we're going to be discussing the use of SAP within the public sector, which probably with those guests isn't a surprise to anybody. And just before we get into that conversation, just a quick icebreaker question to get us all talking. I thought I'd ask you whether you've ever conquered a fear. So while you're thinking about that, the only thing I can think of, what I was not sure whether I've conquered the fear, but I did put a snake around my neck with my son when he was a little boy, and he wanted to do it, and I must admit I was petrified, but I did it, and we held the snake around our neck. So, I've got a picture to prove it somewhere as well, but there we go. So, Jim, what about you?
Well, we had a game last week on, I think I got it mixed up. I think it was 2 truths and 1 lie, or it was 2 lies and 1 truth. I ended up doing 3 truths, so I had no idea what I was doing really. And my fear was swimming. I didn't learn to swim until I was 14. And that was, there was quite a lot of pressure to conquer that fear because most of the people probably in my class at school at that point could swim. And there was me thinking, I can't swim, I can't go near the water, I'm going to die. So I jumped in. The rest is history. Could have gone very badly wrong.
Well done. That's good. And Cheryl?
Oh, it's hard, isn't it? I think mine must be as a single mum. When my daughter was quite young, we live in the countryside, and on occasion we would get mice coming into the kitchen. And I think it's the speed of the mice that's really quite scary. But of course, in front of your daughter, you've got to sort of put a brave face on, haven't you? And in the end, after several attempts, we managed a really nice process of using a piece of paper and a cup. So the piece of paper slid a cup on top of the mouse, piece of paper under the cup, and then we took the mouse out and drove it out into the countryside and let it go.
A very humane removal as well. Well done. And Satpal.
Yeah, I'm intrigued before I answer the question. Kind of was Jim's jumping straight into a paddling pool? I won't say anything, Jim.
It's a good story, Satpal. It was actually a 1.5 metre swimming pool. It's
wow,
cool.
That's impressive. But mine was similar. Water related, not swimming. One of the great things at the school that I was growing up when I was living in Derbyshire was that we got to do outdoor activities, leveraging kind of the Derbyshire Dales, and so we would do kind of orienteering, potholing, and abseiling, and it was brilliant, fantastic. One of the benefits of being in the countryside. But one of the downsides was canoeing. And I absolutely loved canoeing, but I had a massive fear of when you roll over, of actually getting out of the canoe. And the first time I did it, it felt like an eternity. It felt like I was kind of flipped over for 5-10 minutes, trying to pull the, and I forgot what it's called now, trying to pull the thing that you're connected to then get out. And I get out and I'm kind of freaking out. And my teacher kind of comes over. What are you freaking out about? You was only there for like 1 or 2 seconds, but it felt like 5-10 minutes. So my conquering my fear was then to do it a second time, and the 2 teachers came side by side, kind of giving me that reassurance and just kind of having the courage to try it a second time and get through it and then learn the technique. But yeah, that first experience was pretty daunting.
Oh, wow. Oh, fantastic. I always remember we had a volunteer day once where we went out with all of our volunteers and we went to the National Whitewater Centre in Nottingham and we did whitewater rafting. And a couple of people asked us never to do that again as an activity. So it can be quite scary. So, okay, so welcome to each and every one of you. And, just to get us started, I'd like to stay with you, if I may, Satpal. And I just thought we maybe kick off with a discussion around the kind of status of the digital transformation across the UK&I public sector. So, Satpal, if you could kick us off on that, please. What's your view?
Yeah, I kind of my reflections kind of over the last, I would say, three to 5 years has been, I think UK public sector has made steady progress in terms of digital transformation. I think some of the strategy and policy direction that UK government has kind of driven, which started kind of over a decade ago, has really helped. And I think the maturity of some of that digital transformation does vary depending on the industry within public sector. So I think there is very different maturity that exists across the NHS, local government, kind of the police sector, the defence, central government, higher education, further education, and within schools. I would say kind of where COVID has had an impact has been an acceleration around digital transformation, typically in the front office, kind of touching the front line. Clearly, a big impact straight away with the pandemic was the drive and the need to deliver remote working, flexible working, kind of moving towards cloud-based productivity tools. So a lot of that kind of front office access, there was a lot of digital transformation that I think has happened over the last kind of 3 years, kind of pre-pandemic and then accelerated during the pandemic. I think where there's been less real digital transformation has been in that complete kind of end-to-end transformation of processes that reforms and connects the back office and the front office systems. And I think that's now where we're starting to see the switch and the dynamics change within public sector around, well, okay, I've done quite a lot in terms of the front office and the impact with staff, but actually, how do I drive efficiencies? How do I drive agility, time to value in connecting transformation of my back office and my front office systems together? And I think that is now the next evolution of how public sector can start to accelerate that digital transformation by looking at end-to-end business transformation. I think the other aspect that we're seeing in the market is the need for value and solutions to be delivered quickly and to have impact quickly. And a really good example recently that we've seen is an organisation like Transport for London, where actually they were able to deploy 4 cloud HR modules, for example, in 13 weeks. And typically that would have been unheard of. That would have been, I don't know, a 6, 9, maybe 12-month project, kind of end to end previously. But that agility is now, I think, starting to come both from a technology perspective, but also a slightly different mindset within public sector that actually, no, we need to be able to deliver value back to the business quickly, efficiently, and at low risk.
Well, thank you for that, Satpal. And Jim, you look across the whole of EMEA North. So what's your view about the UK?
I would echo Satpal's point that we do see variances in the sub-industries within public services. I think the UK is seen as a kind of leading edge country globally. I think you think of the US, you think of Australia, you think of Singapore, and you think of the UK. But in reality, we're probably not where we should be. I think, again, to Satpal's point, the public sector made some great strides during the pandemic. It proved that rapid execution could be done. But I think I was reading I think it was a Home Office report last week, or it may have been a Government Digital Services report, and the conclusion was we're not where we should be and we're still lagging behind certain other industries. Now, that's a bit of a throwaway remark because public sector is not retail, it's not manufacturing, it's not there to make a profit, it's not there to return shareholder value. But I think there are opportunities, and I think it's about adopting those solutions that can meet citizen and constituent and employee requirements. And again, this whole thought about the heart of the organisation, the core operations, there's been lots of stuff done around employee collaboration, constituent collaboration, access to services, hybrid working, but have we looked at the core of operations, the heartbeat? And I think, again, linking up to what Satpal said, by linking front through to back, there's an opportunity there. And it doesn't have to be enterprise-wide, it can be done in stages. But I think there is opportunity, but it's a brave step, I think, which I'm sure Cheryl will comment on.
Mm-hmm. And over to you, Cheryl. Obviously, it's somebody at the coalface, so to speak, on the front line. What's your view?
Yeah, I think that I think COVID did us a lot of favours in some ways, because I think it was a bit of a wake-up call. And certainly, as Satpal demonstrated with Transport for London, within Gloucestershire County Council, within a matter of weeks, we rolled out Qualtrics, which would have taken several months previously. And there was a real driver there for us to check on the well-being of our staff who were all of a sudden working remotely. And that was a great tool to be able to do that. And there was real support from the chief executive and senior directors to find out exactly how staff were feeling during the pandemic. I think we've still, as Jim says, I think we've still got a long way to go. I think we're still not looking across the whole end-to-end process from front office into back office, as Satpal says. And I think from the SAP point of view, it's probably a good thing to have the maintenance coming to an end on ECC 6 in 2027, because that does give you a bit of a drive, and it does allow you to focus your mind about upgrading where you are on SAP at the moment and making the best use of technology. And then I think that's your first stepping stone to then thinking, and what else can we do? How can we take this transformation even further?
Oh, thank you. And where do you see the biggest challenges currently facing the UK public sector, Cheryl?
I think there's always that demand for to maximise value and to make sure that we make the best use of public funds. And we have to balance that against a real demand for excellence. So, quite often people's technology at home is better than you have in the office, and expectations of users are really quite high as a result. People want to have things that are intuitive, a really easy to use interface, and then I think it's about trying to keep that balance and achieve that excellence whilst thinking about making best use of public funds, and then taking that step to really transform and modernise, so real-time processing, getting that platform for future automation and innovation, and making sure that we are putting data at the heart of our decision making. And I think once we can achieve that, we'll be in a really good position.
Thank you. And Satpal, what's your view on that?
Yeah, I think Cheryl made some great points, and specifically around from a digital and technology perspective. I'll kind of maybe land and give you two or three perspectives that's slightly different, maybe more on the business side. I think for me, some of the challenges we're seeing that's facing kind of the public sector organisations, the first is capacity. So if we're thinking about a digital transformation, how can they drive capacity to be able to change, but also keep the lights on? And that's partly investment, that's partly people, and that's partly kind of skills and training. But that capacity issue and that shift from keeping the lights on to then refocusing that capacity and resources to deliver the business and digital transformation, I think is a big challenge. I think the second is around being able to, as they demonstrate quick wins, especially to the business. I think kind of historically over the last decade, public sector has been known for lots of delays in not just technology, but in other kind of construction and infrastructure kind of programs. So I think delivering on time and successful back office and front office digital transformation programs, you need to deliver quick wins. So identifying in that value case, in that technology roadmap, what could be some of those quick wins in the first 3, 6, 9 months of a program, I think is really important, not just to demonstrate value as part of the business case, but also to continue the cultural transformation that is being delivered, and kind of driving that, winning the hearts and minds of ultimately the employees in the organization. And I think the third aspect is kind of one of the things we haven't done a great job, I think, in public sector and also in the private sector as well, is really helping the business and the technology part of the business truly understand, well, what is the current business processes that exist, and how is that going to change as part of a new technology transformation. So that whole business process intelligence, I think, is going to be a critical area moving forwards, to help, again, the capacity, but also help deliver and ensure value is successfully delivered as part of these transformation programs.
Thank you. And do you have anything to add to that at all, Jim?
I guess I'd be interested in this group's view on the external factors, the global instability, the endless disruption, the cost of living crisis, the energy crisis. I'm probably going to run out of the number of crises I can talk about. But I think what that means to local public services, if I'm right, is higher demand for service, more constituents requiring support, perhaps families or individuals that historically didn't turn to local authorities for support and assistance, or central government. So I think that's a consideration. And how does that need get met in the background of tightening public finances? We've got inflation costs going up, we've got the cost of borrowing going up, aligned with increased demand for services. So in reality, the demand's higher and the cost to service higher. So is that a challenge? And if so, does something need to stop to enable those critical services to happen? Then I'd probably add another point. I think both Cheryl and Satpal talked about it, but the importance of the workforce. I think it's recognised there's a little bit of a workforce crisis going on. It's not unique to public services, but I did read an LGA report last week, and in the survey, 9 out of 10 local public services organisations said they were experiencing staff recruitment and retention difficulties. And I think it's also recognised by the analysts. If you listen to Gartner or IDC, they'll say that employee well-being is one of the new metrics. It's really, really, really important. So I think we've got challenges externally, we've got challenges financially, and there are some challenges around the workforce. A little bit depressing, I do apologise.
No, I think that's very true, and we've spoke about it in a number of discussions around that, that skills gap in the world. I mean, obviously focusing on the SAP standpoint, but I think it's also prevalent throughout other areas as well in all industries. And just staying with you a second, Jim, how is SAP supporting the public sector customers?
So a little bit of rear view mirror, just to state that SAP have been in public services now for over 45 years. We have got last year's numbers, slightly over 17,000 global customers. We support almost 60% of United Nations countries. And I think, so that's a little bit of our pedigree, but so what, you might ask, what about going forward? So it's things like how we purposefully publish our roadmaps, so the public sector, and a specific roadmap for public sector, customers can see what's coming, they can see how it meets to their business demand. We've also, as a business, moved to a customer success model. So the company's been restructured. Both Satpal and I work in the customer success board area, and that's exactly what it's about, delivering success for our customers. The way we're measured, the way we're monitored, it's all about this concept called customer lifetime value, which means it's not about just selling software and disappearing off into the horizon. It's about working alongside collaboratively to deliver value. I think the other thing I'd point out is the investment in sovereign cloud. So we're making, I know it's difficult for government to decide, do I have data in country? Can I have public cloud? I'm not sure on-prem is going to be sustainable. So SAP have gone down a route of looking, particularly in the EU, how do we provide sovereign cloud for our public services customers. And then lastly, we've in our region, we've established a dedicated public services team to help with government terms and conditions. And I'm sure a few people here will nod that that's never the easiest thing to sort out. So we've said, look, public sector, fourth largest industry for SAP globally, really important in EMEA North, really important in the UK. And terms and conditions and sovereign cloud are two challenging issues for us. So let's fix the problem.
Thanks. And Satpal, anything to add?
Yeah, I think maybe more from a kind of what is SAP doing from a technology perspective that supports public sector. I think there's three things to add. Kind of one is touching on some of those points Jim mentioned. We have lots of accelerators. So we have pre-populated content for all industries within public sector that can really deliver quick time to value, which is my second point. So when we talk about kind of what is SAP's technology strategy, we have built world-class industry-leading line of business solutions. So whether you're looking for people HR transformation, whether you're looking at finance transformation or procurement transformation, we have discrete cloud business applications for all of those areas. And those are best of breed and highlighted as best of breed by all of the industry analysts. But what's really powerful is that those best of breed applications come together to deliver best of suite experiences for our customers. So what does that mean for public sector customers? Well, it allows them to deploy value quickly. So the example I gave of TfL, the example Cheryl gave of kind of deploying Qualtrics, those are all modules that can be deployed in weeks, not months or years. So as you're thinking about a transformation program, kind of the old school view of how you deliver an ERP program and kind of 3 years of effort and then you get something shiny at the end, that's kind of long gone from a technology kind of architecture perspective in where SAP has made its investments. And so that can directly support public sectors in that acceleration, in that quick time to value. And then the third point I would say is we're investing in unique, innovative tools that I think are going to be fundamental building blocks to support not just digital transformation over the next few years, but drive continuous improvement. So digital transformation shouldn't just be a one-stop destination. It's how you then drive continuous improvement beyond that initial change. And so the investments we're making in digital tools like SAP Signavio to deliver business process intelligence, the investments around Qualtrics to deliver an experience management platform that allows organizations to kind of capture citizen feedback in relation to employee feedback, in relation to technology change feedback, so you get a complete 360-degree view of sentiment and process data, I think is going to be really powerful. So I think as the kind of public sector kind of goes into that transformation over the next kind of 5 to 10 years, we've got some really fundamental, innovative tools that's going to help drive that continuous improvement for the long term.
Thank you.
Hi, we're the UK and Ireland SAP user group. Did you know we're a fiercely independent not-for-profit? Did you know we're a vibrant community of over 6,500 SAP users? And did you know we help each other by sharing resources, championing education and influencing SAP's future development? Well, you do now. If you'd like to get the most from your SAP investments and be in the know, visit our website, sapusers.org/pod. We hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast.
Just on to you, Cheryl. Obviously, we just heard Jim and Satpal there talk about the aim of SAP to make customers successful and the human element and also the technological element that's supporting that journey. Are you finding that SAP is supporting you in the way you need to drive success for Gloucester County Council?
Yes, I think we are most definitely. I think I've seen a change just in the last 2 or 3 years, really, in terms of our engagement with SAP, and that SAP are really starting to listen and understand the challenges of public sector. And I think they also understand that we quite often all have a different starting point. So the fact that that they're still offering the option for customers to remain on premise. Perhaps an organisation has heavily invested in their own data centre, and they need to really sweat that asset and keep that asset running. But equally, there'll be other organisations that have a cloud strategy, want to move forward quickly on that, and want to really maximise the value of that cloud approach. So I like the fact that SAP understand that public sector all has a different starting point, and quite often has different drivers and a different strategy that their organisation is setting. I also think, and I hate to say this because it sort of jumps to mind, but SAP's dedicated team. So we worked very closely with Jim and his team when we were building our business case initially, and that was absolutely great to be able to get that advice and that support. So that was in our early days of our journey, and then I guess now we're just starting our implementation in Gloucestershire, and I'm certainly starting to see the value of preferred success and the customer success partners arrangement, which is in place in SAP now. So I can sort of see it from the beginning through to partway through implementation that SAP are supporting us on that journey at each step.
Thank you. And just on that point you mentioned there, building the business case, obviously early on in the project, it tends to come before everything and getting it signed off internally to move forward. So obviously you've been successful in that. And how can other public sector customers look to make their business case to move to S4HANA?
I think one of the first things they should do is to engage with the SAP Value Advisory Services, and Jim was part of that for us. I think whenever you're looking at something new in the public sector and wanting to build a business case, one of the first things that you should consider is what other organisations have done, what benchmarks are available, and to really understand what the needs of your organisation are, and where those opportunities for improvement exist. There's always going to be that pressure to reduce costs, but I think increasing process efficiency and reducing the sort of complexity in your IT landscape is quite often both really good drivers in terms of making that business case persuasive, and ensuring that you get the support right from the top of your organisation. I think we had a great workshop facilitated where we looked at our pains and our gains, so where we could improve, things that we thought were working well at the moment, and had some really good interaction with SAP around that, and that provided us with some real grist to the mill to be able to create our business case and make it persuasive, and to be able to go through the various stages of approval that we have to in the public sector, through to approval at cabinet level to be able to get that approval to move ahead.
Thank you. And Jim, Cheryl mentioned they're engaging with your team and obviously the wider teams in SAP, value advisory services, etc. So what are the ways that SAP is helping customers on that journey build business cases?
So we have a what's called a vision to value framework, which is a structured methodology, which I'm interested to hear, Cheryl, you talked about the CSPs. Now that the vision to value almost went to the point of the end of implementation. It's now been extended through into what we call customer lifetime value. So that should be a never-ending support model for customers. That's the theory, that SAP will be measured on the success of how successfully customers adopt and deploy and gain benefit from the software. So that's a bit of a change. So there's things like the Value Lifecycle Manager, which is a tool we've built since 2004, and that's got many hundreds of data points. Cheryl, you did talk about benchmarking. So I think what's really powerful about it is that it's industry specific. So we're not saying, what does the finance in Gloucestershire look like compared to the finance of Nestle? Now, there may be some comparable processes, but it's not apples for apples. So we have industry specific. We can slice it by business process, we can slice it by business area, and we can slice it by application. So there's the ability to look at the business case in different lenses. I think I would also suggest that there are a number of tools that not all of our customers take advantage of. There are things like there's early diagnostic tools, there's custom code checks, there's what's called a Pathfinder report. So there's almost a lot of self-help which you would get support on that would enable the customer to really understand their current estate and how complicated or not complicated it is. So I think I would say reach out, as Cheryl said, to the value advisory team. This is a free service, it's an SAP investment. Not every customer knows that. And the important thing is you will be getting it the SAP way, not the friendly consultants way. Now there's no criticism in using external consultants, absolutely fine with that, but the question is, are they doing it to the prescribed methodology? So I think that there's a really strong asset there for our customers, both existing and potential, to take advantage of.
Thanks, Jim. Anything to add, Satpal?
Look, I've been at SAP now for just over 2 years, and I think one of the things that really struck me when I joined was we don't call it a business case, we call it a value case, and even the team, as we've said in this podcast, it's a value advisory team, and that really kind of impressed me when I joined. So kind of our investments and the structures is absolutely there to support our customers through to value realization. And I think that's really important. Quite often, we talked about at the very beginning around kind of digital transformation and maturity in public sector. Public sector has to build a business case. It's public funding. It has to do its due diligence. But I think one of the things it historically hasn't done a very good job of is then tracking value realization. And I think that for me is the real power of the methodology that Jim spoke about. It is how you then capture value as you are going through that deployment, through to kind of post-deployment, as Jim indicated. So you're constantly driving that continuous improvement, constantly driving that value realization, and leveraging, as Jim and Cheryl said, kind of we've got over we've got one of the industry leading benchmark data from over 15,000 customers. That's unique, and kind of our customers need to understand that and leverage that, because it's investments we're making, and we can help share that best practice with you.
Thank you. And I know we talked about S4 there, and obviously part of Gloucestershire County Council's journey is RISE with SAP. So just staying with you there, Satpal, can you talk a little bit about how RISE can support public sector organisations on that journey to S4?
Yeah, absolutely, Craig. For me, it's kind of RISE is that methodology. It's our accelerators, it's templates, it's all of the assets that we've built to deliver a proven process based on thousands of customers globally. So if we think about some of the most complex global customers, both private sector and public sector, who have started their journey with SAP on RISE, got some real big innovative brands in the market. We've captured all of that best practice experience for how you move to the cloud and package that up into RISE. So that engagement that we have from the vision to value, but through the actual deployment with those accelerators and templates, proven processes, that's how we deliver success through the RISE program.
Thank you. Anything to add, Jim?
I think one thing that could be quite beneficial for for every customer, but public sector specifically, is that RISE gives the opportunity to simplify the IT operating model and the contractual model. So I think that's particularly relevant to the complex area of contracting in the public sector, which we know can be quite challenging. So I think that's really important. And I think the other thing, touching on what Satpal said, it's all about being outcome driven. And I think that's really, really important, that you're buying capabilities, but you need the outcomes. So I think we can streamline it. I think there are things around industry best and next practices that become part of RISE. Satpal, you talked about Signavio and BPI, that's part of the RISE program. So being able to use that sort of tooling to continue on this long-term journey, which is digital transformation. So those were the only points I'd probably add, I think, Craig.
Yeah. Thanks. And Cheryl, so what kind of, I suppose, attracted you and your team to RISE on your journey?
I think there was two main things for me. The big one was the one that Jim mentioned in terms of being able to simplify that IT landscape, and you have one contract. So, I don't have to think about lots of different suppliers and going out to tender for your Azure platform and then the software on top of that and the application, and therefore having one partner who's responsible for delivering the entire solution for you is really attractive, and that contracting one contract with that supplier is also really beneficial. One of the things I particularly liked is the tasters and the credits that come with Rise. So I think it is quite hard, as we discussed earlier, sometimes to build a business case in the public sector. So we don't often get our hands on some of that cutting edge technology and have the opportunity to explore how that could benefit us, how it could improve our frontline services and the way that we operate and introduce some efficiencies. So the fact that you can just have a little taster that's effectively free as part of your Rise contract, and be able to explore that and gather information upon which then to build a business case is really quite powerful. So at the moment we're using one of our tasters with Signavio, and we've been running our process discovery, and we're just about to have some conversations about what that found and what that did discover about our processes and where we do things well and where we perhaps could introduce some improvements. So I think that's really a great opportunity and really flexible, and it opens up a whole load of benefits that wouldn't have existed otherwise, and would have been really sometimes quite hard to build that business case initially.
Thank you. And you mentioned early on that kind of, I think, one supplier, one contract, not having to go out for tenders. And we talked earlier, I think, around the challenges of purchasing from the public sector perspective. So when it comes to procurement of new software, and obviously in this case SAP, what do public sector organisations need to consider, Cheryl?
I mean, I think first and foremost is that we've got to adhere to the public contract regulations of 2015, and fortunately, there are now some frameworks, such as those provided by Crown Commercial Services, that can give us some support and give us a framework and an opportunity to comply with those regulations in a much more simplistic way. So there's three frameworks which are most frequently used. There's G-Cloud, which has been around for many years, and I think is, I don't know, maybe now on version 13 of G-Cloud, which is primarily around hosting and support. But the two frameworks that we used was the back office software framework from Crown Commercial Services, and also the software design and implementation services framework. And you can either procure, as a customer, you can either procure your services direct from SAP through these frameworks or via a partner. And I think this means that it's much easier and much quicker to, well, I use the word quicker quite fluidly, actually. It can reduce your procurement timeline, and it can also help to iron out those sort of terms and conditions because they come with the framework. The only thing I would say is that the framework does sort of cover the basics, and you do need to probably allow a little bit more time to make sure that whoever your supplier is, that you understand if they've got any additional terms and conditions that you need to consider as part of that contractual arrangement.
Thank you. And Jim, I assume this also brings some challenges to SAP as well in working through these frameworks, etc. So from the SAP side, are there things that customers can do early on, I think, to make it easier for themselves going through that procurement process?
So yeah, it's a good question, Craig. So obviously collaboration, communication, I think there's a little bit of a grey line, isn't there, when if Cheryl's in Gloucester, can she speak to us openly about, I'm thinking of doing this? At what point did procurement get involved and say, well, actually we need to have some ethical walls and ethical boundaries in place? So I think that can be a challenge but an opportunity, because there are ways to collaborate and stay compliant to PCR. That's absolutely possible. I think from my perspective, people need to really ask themselves, what is the business case or value case about? Is it to rip and replace? Is it throw the baby out with the bathwater? Or actually, is the requirement to modernise the system and bring it to the current kind of, you mentioned it earlier, Cheryl, the experience we have at home? Is that the objective, or is it to get rid of bad legacy software? Question mark. I think that needs to be asked in earnest. I think what we see in the marketplace is where customers switch their ERP vendor, so they go from company A to company B, it often ends up with significant time and cost delays into the millions and years. So I think have a real kind of really hard look at it and say, look, what is the problem we're trying to solve? The analysts will tell you that there's no financial benefit from replatforming. So the question is, what do you want to do about the business disruption, the real project costs, and the time to value? So think about that, as well as being compliant with procurement, because procurement's a methodology. You need to think about, what am I trying to achieve? And from a business perspective, what's the right way to achieve it? And then you determine your procurement strategy. The procurement strategy doesn't determine what you're trying to achieve. It governs it. So I think it is a bit of a brave step, because I know the pressures. I've worked in procurement and local government. I know what it's like. It can be challenging, but be brave is what I would say. Embrace it. And just on your point around terms and conditions, I think I mentioned earlier, we recognise the importance and significance of compliance with public sector contract regs and also government frameworks. Government frameworks are here for the long term. SAP historically did have a few issues around that, and we've decided specifically in EMEA North and in the UK to kind of embrace that and put in place public sector specialists to help navigate through that procurement process, because we know we have to comply. Okay, there will be the odd exception where we might want to talk about A, B, C or X, Y, Z, or as you said, Cheryl, you might want to put your own terms and conditions in sometimes. So we've embraced that, and we realise we have to comply.
Thank you. And Satpal, we heard Jim there talking about collaboration and communication being crucial early on. And how can SAP and public sector customers work better together?
Yeah, I think my overall perspective and advice for our customers would be kind of, firstly, engage with SAP directly to help you on that business case. As Jim alluded to, we've got lots of tools, we've got lots of investments that we can help you. Engaging in that way doesn't preclude anything from a procurement perspective. So leverage the investments and the assets and the resources we have to help you build that vision to value case. I think the second thing as well is thinking about things slightly differently in terms of what can those existing customers do now as part of a phase one delivery in advance of the bigger transformation. So there's lots of things that can be done around mapping business process intelligence, kind of cleaning up your data, having your data archiving strategy. That's a really critical aspect that actually can reduce cost as part of that transformation. So kind of really getting your house in order and thinking about phase one activities, which are going to be predominantly more kind of technical based, but really critical, can not only save cost but also reduce risk as part of that transition. And I think the third thing as well is thinking about in that collaboration how we could do things differently. So how can actually where an organization might have specific pain points by the business, we touched on kind of recruitment, retention, kind of the whole HR and people transformation aspects. How could we do things differently by deploying some of those cloud modules early in advance of kind of a bigger kind of business case transformation? And I think that's an area that we're increasingly seeing customers think about is, okay, I've got my roadmap for moving from my legacy ECC to RISE and S/4HANA Cloud, but actually I've got some pressing business needs. We can help in terms of de-risking and deploying some of those other cloud modules quickly, efficiently, and drive value for the business as well.
Thank you. And just back to you, Jim, we heard Satpal there talking about advice for SAP customers looking to modernise their SAP environment? Is there anything you can add there on what customers should be doing really to modernise their environment?
Well, I think we've all touched upon it in terms of getting your house in order, using the tools and methodology that are available. I think there's a knowledge gap. I really do, and maybe this is something we can, as part of the SAP user group, we can help. But I think, and it's not a finger of blame, but I think both SAP and our customers, we don't have enough visibility both ways. So until you embarked on the journey, Cheryl, you probably didn't know what support we could give you. And you found that out, but I'd ask the question, is there enough awareness out there at the moment of customers thinking about updating, migrating, transforming? Do they know about value assurance? Do they know about guided business case? Do they know about Pathfinder, etc., etc.? These are tools that can help them get a really good understanding of their current estate and help them make better decisions. And it doesn't mean huge amounts of spend externally. These are, in the majority, free at the point of consumption, these services. So I think maybe there's an action there. Do we need to have a level of awareness that's pushed up a little bit to our SAP user group in the UK, just to say, look, if you're thinking about it, come and speak to us and let us show you what we can do to help you inform your decision. And I think that would be really powerful, that if customers and SAP together made that kind of brave step. And then it goes into the kind of our long-term view now, which is customer lifetime value. We will be measured on how successfully Gloucestershire operates on SAP software. So there's a mind shift in the model. So it's all about being in it for the long term, which I think is really, really important. And then I think the other thing we didn't talk about was the growth of cloud in the UK. I don't want to open that up with 1 minute to go, but I think we probably didn't mention cloud in this whole conversation, which is a first. So maybe there's a thought about, modularity, doing things step by step, which Satpal mentioned. Can we do things quickly, almost sprint one, that doesn't mean a huge amount of investment, that proves the value, that demonstrates the new world and builds confidence?
Thank you. And Cheryl, final words from you, if I may, on as advice to other public sector customers on kind of modernising their environment, and also how can they work better with SAP.
Pressure's on then. Final words. Thank you, Craig. I think organisations need to be clear about what they're looking for and what their drivers are, what's their strategy. I think they need to take time to understand the marketplace. And I completely agree with what Jim said earlier about the evidence that if you're changing platforms and changing suppliers, there is a much bigger risk there. And certainly from our experience, you do sort of get into the language and the understanding of SAP, and trying to think in a different headspace is really, really tough. And I think the user group commissioned a cost of change white paper, which is well worth customers who are thinking about these moves looking at, because it does cost significantly more if you're going to be changing those platforms. I think also learn from other public sector organisations, so a bit of a plug for my own special interest group. We're very active. We share experiences, we share lessons learnt, and we will share things like our tender documentation and our business cases and things like that. Consider what skills you've got, what you want to have in-house, and what support you need from partners. There is a future skills gap. I think about a high percentage of organisations, over 90%, are concerned about that skills gap. So perhaps it's time to start thinking about what your strategy will be, and could you consider upskilling your own team and becoming SAP accredited. And I think those preparations that Satpal talked about, so your archiving, your data cleansing, it's a good time to revisit the customizations that you've accumulated over the years and ask if they're really still needed. And hopefully the answer is no, and probably there's some in there that you're not actually using. So all those preparations are really going to put you in good stead for your move to SAP Rise in the Cloud.
Thank you very much. Thank you all so much. Satpal, Jim, Cheryl, thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights. And you mentioned the cost of change white paper, Cheryl, and we've just launched at a recent SIG the public sector white paper that you all work very heavily on. A joint paper from SAP and the user group on helping public sector organisations drive their transformation and move forward with SAP. So that is available free of charge to our members. So please do visit our website at sapusers.org to get your copy. And thanks again, and thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it valuable. And until the next time, stay safe, stay well, and keep washing your hands.